All right, everybody, welcome back to another class. And this time we are joined for the third time by Roger Palmer from whatsondisneyplus.com. And Roger and I spoke back in December 2020 and then December 2021 about Disney Plus and kind of have a recap of what the year was in Disney Plus. And I was going back and reviewing those recently. And, 2020 was kind of the first year of Disney Plus existence, but then also there's the pandemic that's thrown in. So Disney Plus saw huge subscriber growth, but some of their content slowed down because of the pandemic. And then 2021, the recap was, where do we go from here? And things are speeding up, and there was a lot of Marvel content on there. You were starting to get a little bit more Lucasfilm content on there. And now 2022's recap, I feel like, Roger, we could have done this like in March. Like we could do like every 3 or 4 months, because there's just so much changing, not just on Disney Plus, but on streaming, on direct consumer content, on all of it. And so we're going to attempt to have a recap of 2022, and we're going to also talk about I have a few questions for Roger along the way as far as what's the future look like for all of this stuff. So Roger, welcome back. Quickly let us know what 2022 was like for you on Disney Plus.
Well, the last year really has just been just a continued train. It just never stopped. It just kept going. The content just kept dropping, new releases constantly, constant feed of like Marvel, Star Wars, other shows as well. Starting to see some more general entertainment stuff dropping in the US. Internationally, it was even more crazy, because like here in the UK, our Disney Plus has a 6th tab called Star, and that basically takes all of the Hulu stuff and chucks it all into Disney Plus. So for me, things like Welcome to Chippendales, Pam and Tommy, The Old Man, that's all been on Disney Plus as well. So you throw all of that in. It's literally just been non-stop and then all the 20th Century Studios, the Searchlight Pictures. Yeah, just constant releases. It's been fantastic.
And like you're talking about constant drop of content, it's just there was such a huge, like I said, from 2020 to 2021 there was a big change. In 2021 there was this big speed up of content, and then 2022 is just like, in the United States now there are R-rated programming. There's R-rated programming on Disney Plus. There's TVMA programming on Disney Plus. So that was a really big deal in the United States to change the viewer profiles and the access that viewers had and everything. And so it was just all of the time, just constant news coming out, and having you talk about this. I think you're the best person to talk about a lot of this stuff, because when I read your stuff, when I watch your stuff, you're not only talking about the latest content that has dropped. Before we started recording, you said, later you're going to be listening to the Netflix earnings call, and I think, what is it, next week that Disney does their earnings call, or in a couple weeks?
Yeah, a couple of weeks. Yeah.
So, to kind of recap the content before we get into some other more broad questions, what were some of the favorite shows you had in 2022? And so we'll go through like Marvel, Lucasfilm, Pixar, and then original movie, and anything that would have been on Star or Hulu. Yeah. So let's start with Marvel. What were some of your favorite Disney Plus content in 2022?
Moon Knight was the best for me. Moonlight, I loved that series. It was fantastic. New character, didn't really know much about him. Obviously, as well, getting Oscar Isaac in there as well. It just felt like it did feel like a movie I would have liked a little bit longer. I think it was a little bit, it got a little bit quick at the end. But for me, that was the number one
Mhm.
show of the year. I did enjoy Miss Marvel. I feel like they could have, they taken them some of the middle bits out when they were in India. They could have basically turned that into a movie. She-Hulk was like, I I liked it, but it was very different. And
Mhm.
that's not a bad thing. It just didn't, but it didn't have that hit
Mm.
punch
Yeah.
that like Moon Knight did, where it was a little bit more serious. I'll be honest, I didn't like Werewolf by Night. I'm not a big fan of horror and old-fashioned horror, so I kind of didn't connect so well with that one. And then the holiday special, The Guardians of the Galaxy, it was fun. I enjoyed it. It
Yeah.
was a lot of fun, but I'm hoping we're going to see a lot more of that in 2024 and beyond.
Yeah. And there's a lot of rumors that with more profit driven decision making, which we'll talk about here in just a little bit, maybe some projects that were being considered or developed for Disney Plus series possibly will be special presentations. I really enjoyed the Werewolf by Night special presentation, and I loved the Guardians of the Galaxy. I thought that was, I mean, it had heart, it had humor. That was a lot of fun. But you know, with Werewolf by Night, I don't know if you watched the Marvel Assembled, like the behind the scenes
Oh,
documentaries of
yeah,
how they do those.
yeah. Directed by Night. I'll be honest. I enjoyed
Yeah.
Directed by Night more than I like the first.
That
Than I thought that was really good.
yeah, I loved the way that they did that. And to me it was proof that it was like this is something they're trying something different. Like they're already trying something different, with all of these series when they came out with WandaVision, which I'm actually rewatching right now, and all of these different genres. And I really enjoyed that behind the scenes look. I agree. Moon Knight was my favorite. Moon Knight is actually probably one of my favorite that they have put out, because the character, I really enjoyed the character development because of the inclusion of dissociative identity disorder, and talking to people about that, and talking to the representation of dissociative identity disorder. For anybody who's listening that hasn't listened to it, I think it's class 97. I was able to talk to a colleague about Dr. Rick Grieve about like the clinical representation of that, which was fascinating. And another reason I really enjoyed it is Memphis is a city tied pretty closely to Egyptian mythos. And so at the university, we actually have a very well-known Egyptology program here. And so class 98, I believe, I was able to talk to somebody, Dr. Josh Roberson, about the use of Egyptian mythology in that series. And spoiler alert, they did a great job in both. They said, they took some liberties here and there, but they did a great job in both the representation of the mythos and representation of DID, which I thought was really, really cool that they were going in those areas. I think I liked Miss Marvel. I think She-Hulk is something that could go for a few seasons, because
100%. And yeah.
it's this way that, like, it's like the comics where you could introduce all of these, like, they probably introduced 15 or 20, like, kind of these lower tier characters that people hadn't heard of, but now are included in this. And if they ever, for whatever reason, want to mention them again or use them again, now, like, they've been introduced, I thought that was a pretty interesting thing. Uh, what about Lucasfilm? We had a few
Um,
Star Wars shows. We had Willow.
yeah. Well, I'll start off with Willow. That was a fun little series. I really enjoyed the first like half of it. I was really getting into. It dragged a little bit in the middle. I felt it got a little bit into like in like video game terms, side quests. Too many side quests running off
Mhm.
doing stuff that you didn't really need to do. Looked great. I was just really enjoying having a high end fantasy series on
Mhm.
Disney Plus that wasn't Marvel or Star Wars. So I
Yeah.
did actually. I'm really hoping they do more seasons of it. I enjoyed it. I thought that was good. I loved Andor. Andor was it was much more serious, much more just a well done show. I enjoyed the 12 episodes, the longer ones. Didn't seem to connect with people the same way. In terms of how many people were watching it, which is a shame because it's a lot better. Wasn't so keen on Obi-Wan Kenobi. Again, it felt a little bit like they could have cut that into 3 episodes and that would have been better. And Book of Boba Fett, I enjoyed the Mandalorian episode.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was a little bit again, this is the same thing, and it's the same thing with Marvel. They overcooked it. They just
Mhm.
did too much, and I'm expecting this year and maybe next year we're going to see a little bit of a slowdown as they're overcooking these franchises a little bit with too much. And I think they definitely learned with Marvel and Star Wars at the same time does not equal double the amount of viewing.
Yeah. As a big fan of Willow growing up, I enjoyed the series. I was honestly a little surprised that, and watching the movie Willow as an adult, I realized there's a lot more humor in it than I realized when I was a kid. But I was surprised that of how much humor was in the Willow series, and because as a kid I thought it was this kind of grand spectacle journey, and it was all very, very serious. And then watching the show, um I did really enjoy it. And I hope they do more series or more seasons. Also, I think
I do.
go
Yeah.
ahead.
I was going to say, I do think it. Don't think it helped following Lord of the Rings and House of Dragon. I think that was a little bit of a problem where you had two, I mean, quite serious
Yeah.
shows. I mean, House of Dragon was fantastic, and then to follow that, the tone was a little bit off. In like how they spoke, they didn't really, being modern speak,
Yeah.
kind of threw things off a little bit. The random like Metallica songs in it,
Yeah.
kind of, yeah, it's just a few choices that I've seen a little bit odd, but overall, I would definitely recommend people check that one out. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. I think of on the Andor, I really liked Andor, but I did have trouble keeping up with a lot of it because it is it was a lot slower. And it's almost kind of embarrassing to admit that like it was too slow for me in points, because like I needed something a little faster. But I kind of I honestly kind of view Andor and Willow to a certain extent the same way that, well, the first time we talked about the right stuff and how
Yeah,
good that series was, but how few people actually watched that series to engage with it. And it
yes,
ultimately led to Disney saying they're not going to do any more seasons of the right stuff, which I that's one of my favorite series still on Disney Plus that I've seen. Especially when you're counting originals and you're not counting, Marvel and Star Wars and things like that. That one's up there for me. And that's the way I kind of think about Andor and Willow to a certain extent. Is that really, really good series? I think that with Andor, when maybe in another couple years, when more stories have come out and you see just kind of how important that storyline is, maybe people will go back and appreciate that one a little bit more. I'm not sure. I don't. What are your thoughts on that?
yeah. I think again, it's that kind of weird thing of I think Disney got this problem of trying to get older, more mature people watching Disney Plus and like things like, and just trying to try the like I mean, Star Wars was kind of like, a lot of people tuning in for, but because it didn't have the cameos, the internet buzz, the people they recognized in the same way, it just didn't like pull people in. And I don't know. I also do wonder if it was just. I do think Andor was badly placed with. I mean, they delayed it a little bit because of House of Dragon,
Mhm.
but it was almost. And they've said this a lot that there was too much. There was too much in 2022,
Mhm.
and we are going to see a drastic reduction probably from
Mhm.
2024 onwards. And they're going to probably shift some shows back from 2023 because there simply was too much. We couldn't keep up. And we're adults with jobs and lives and stuff. We can't keep up with all these shows. And Andor, I think, had a struggle again. You said, it didn't have that same tone, didn't pull people in the same. it's a grown-up Star Wars
Yeah.
series. I mean, it's like night and day to Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah.
And it's going to be interesting with Mando season 3, whether or not that's able to kind of get everyone back in again,
Yeah.
kind of get that buzz going, because we've not really because Obi-Wan Kenobi kind of had a little bit, and then it quickly that seemed to kind of fizzle a little bit as the nostalgia goggles kind of kicked in and stuff.
Yeah. And like Book of Boba Fett, yeah, the Mando season 2.5 they were the most entertaining episodes. And the series even ends with Mandalorian, like we're leading right into season 3 of Mandalorian. So, there were always the jokes like, what happened to Boba Fett? Like he wasn't even in his own show and things like that. I actually really, really liked Obi-Wan Kenobi because of the nostalgia. That was the Darth Vader I remember as a kid being afraid of, and just seeing how, and also it was kind of the step up in brutality for Star Wars, that it was like, oh
Yeah.
that's a little more brutal than I'm used to for them.
I think the only thing that got me with that was doing the Leia gets kidnapped twice in it was like, it was a little bit on the lines of, right, you could have actually just led from her being kidnapped once to us trying to escape. You could have skipped the whole second kidnapping. It just like we didn't need it to do it twice in like 3 weeks. It was a little bit like you could have trimmed that out and we could have cut off 2 episodes and we would have got to the same thing. I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. It was definitely the number 2 show of the year for me. But it was it just again, but it's again, I don't know if it's like the Clone War era is like, I was like what, 18, 20 when they came out. I was at college, and we all hated them because we were classic style. So I don't have the same nostalgia for the Clone Wars as maybe some people a little bit younger do. I like the Clone Wars. I never was as bad as some of them, but I didn't really have that same like because I go back to Boba Fett and the Return. Those are the Return of the Jedi is like the one that was for me. I'm in the Ewok category.
Yeah. So do you think there are projects planned apparently for Star Wars that are outside of what we could call the Skywalker family saga? We've yet to see anything from Star Wars that hasn't involved either a Skywalker, the family, some connection to those original stories.
Yeah.
Like, how successful do you think Star Wars is going to be when it actually fully breaks out of that box? Because there's one show, is it The Acolyte? I think that is supposed to be set Acolyte, like hundreds of years before Skywalker stories.
Yeah, that one's going to be part of like the High Republic era, which they might. It depends. We might get a little bit of Yoda in there because he's in the comic books and the books and stuff.
Okay.
It's gonna. I'll be honest. I'm more looking forward to like the Acolyte and Skeleton Crew because of it being a little bit different.
Yeah.
But it's going to be like a weird thing of like, we might all be saying, well, we don't, we all want something different. They give us something different and we don't go see it.
Yeah.
So then they go, well, you didn't actually. You all wanted it.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be at all surprised if we end up seeing some Rey, Finn, and Poe stuff coming down the line, in another generation where they carry on those stories a little bit.
Yeah, and I mean, for aside from everybody complaining about it, and you're right that people complain, and then when they give something new, people don't go, and it's like, well, you actually wanted the old recipe, you just like said you wanted something new. But I mean, Star Wars has been the Skywalker story, and it's, people can complain about the stories, but the fact that people are complaining about them and have countless conversations or arguments over them is a sign of just how successful they have been. And they've been around for over 50 years now. You can't deny the success of that story. So you also can't blame them if they stick to that story as much as they can. On original programming, and let's try to say original programming that actually showed up on Disney Plus. I know it's be a little bit more difficult for you, since Star is a sixth tile on there.
Yeah.
But we'll talk
Yeah.
about Hulu and Star
Yeah.
next. So
Uh,
what were some of your favorite things that came out on Disney
Um,
Plus proper, I guess?
on the American side of
Yeah,
Disney
yeah.
Plus, that's the way I'll look at it. Luckily, I'm used to doing this because of the website. So, Turning Red was a highlight. That was a fantastic film. Kind of gets a little bit of a bad rap because people go, oh, it should have been released in cinemas and stuff. It's like, yeah, they had to make a decision in the middle of the Omicron variant
Yeah.
situation in like the winter, so they had to make a decision.
Yeah.
So yes, by the time it come out, they probably could have put it out there. Fantastic film, loved it, loved all the Canada references. Thought it was a good, strong story that needed to be told and is vital for kids moving forward. So I really enjoyed that one. I'm trying to think now of some of the other stuff that's come out this year. I wasn't a huge fan of like Hocus Pocus 2 or Disenchanted. Didn't Halloween's not as big a thing here in the UK, so I didn't have nostalgia for like Halloween stuff. I'm just trying to, because I was disappointed in National Treasure. That was one that didn't quite hit because I love the movie. I know it's bad to say this to somebody that that is a professor in university, but I learned a lot of my American history from the National Treasure films. And when I did see the Declaration of Independence in Washington, that was where I knew it from.
Yeah.
That was from the film. So I'm in that category. So I think I'm just trying to think. It's like there's so much, and again, trying to like work out what is, and we're going to see a big difference in 2023 where what is an original is going to start becoming a little bit more blurred with linear and streaming. But yeah, so I'm just trying to think, those were the kind of the big ones. Because I think everything I'm trying to think of it, I remember that start. No, that was stuff.
Yeah.
That was stuff. So I think I'm trying to think of, I think that's most of them. What about you?
I think on National Treasure, and I love those movies. I actually watched both of them. The first one, especially before the series came out, I watched it twice. I watched the second movie one time. I've enjoyed the series, but also on. You said you have learned a lot of history through National Treasure. I will tell you, in the series, I looked it up. Apparently, they filmed the series in Baton Rouge and in New Mexico. And they just so happen in the series to visit two places that I've visited a lot. Graceland, which is not great. So when I watched that, I'm like, that's not Graceland. And what is the inside of Graceland? That's not what that looks like. Now they did some, I guess, some stock video and stuff of a few of the places around there. And then also the Alamo. When I was looking at the Alamo, I'm like, well, that's not the Alamo. And I found out they filmed that in New Mexico.
And I'll be honest, because I've been lucky enough, I have been to Memphis and been to Graceland, and I've been to the Alamo. So I instantly was just like, that's I mean, I kind of willing to give it a pass. I mean, the series just it's like, oh, you need, it's like and again, it's had the same, I think it's the same problem that Willow did. Too many characters, too many extra characters that aren't needed. Just filling out the thing. I was just looking here, a couple of other quick things that Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers. I can't believe I forgot that. That was a real fun movie.
That's my favorite movie that has come out this year. That was especially for somebody growing up around the time that we were growing up and watching Disney then. That was a very, very funny show. Coincidentally, when's the last time you have been to Graceland?
Oh, it was 2005. It was just after Katrina, because we were supposed to have gone to Louisiana and to New Orleans, and so our tour group like changed, and we went to Memphis and Nashville instead. Actually, it was better for me. I'm a country fan and someone that likes Elvis. That worked out great. But it was just after Katrina.
If you ever make it back, you'll have to let me know. We'll go check out Graceland. They've changed it. They've changed obviously they haven't changed the mansion, but the Welcome Center, which I referred to as the old Welcome Center, was just kind of like a strip mall. Now they actually consulted with Walt Disney Imagineers when they were redesigning Graceland. So now when you drive in, and there's a huge parking lot, and you actually walk up through these replica guitar gates, like the musical gates, and like you walk down essentially what is like the Main Street USA of Graceland, to the Welcome Center. And it's such a neat, like, I say it's a better experience now, because of what they did with the Welcome Center. The mansion is virtually unchanged. They did a few things on the grounds, like took a few of the memorabilia and put it somewhere else, but it's really, really cool. So I think you were saying some other things about originals.
Yeah, so the main one really was, like I said, there was Chippendale Rescue Rangers was a lot of fun. I mean, also there was one that was kind of, I was just looking at a look list, was Better Late Than Never. That was a fun little like musical film that I think I enjoyed that one much more than Trevor. But it's just nice to kind of, it was again just nice to see Disney kind of trying some stuff out. It'll be interesting to see if this kind of carries on, or whether they're just gonna go back into just doing a few more like theatrical releases. But yeah, I mean, there was a few other series like Santa Clauses, but I was a little bit iffy on that one. But yeah, generally again, it's just been the Star stuff that's been really jumping out at me.
Yeah, well, and I would say the other things for me, we really did, we liked Better Nate Than Ever. We watched that a few times with the boys, and then we just finished Mighty Ducks Game Changers with the boys because they watched the first season, so they really liked the second season. And then I'm a fan of the Big Shot show. I thought
fantastic.
That's a really, really good show that I hope they continue doing that, because I think that's kind of that in between, it's a little more mature, but still fits within that mold of what Disney sees itself as,
It kind of feels like that the teenagers acted like teenagers a little bit more. I'll be honest, Mighty Ducks season 2, I bailed. I got it was so dull. And there's like they're 13-year-olds acting like 5-year-olds. It was just like, Mysterious Benedict Society season 2 was a little bit iffy too. It didn't have the same impact that the first one did. Again, it's that situation of, some of these shows, like I really enjoyed Big Shot, but I don't think the fact they did a binge drop and it's been 4 or 5 months, and then you had to fight to get the second season, I think that one's probably done.
The other one that I was thinking of was Sulphur Springs. Secrets of Sulphur Springs, I think, is a pretty interesting show. There's also, I just stumbled across, it's a French series, and then they did a holiday special of it also, Weekend Family. Which is that's just fun, and it's such a funny series that that I really, really enjoyed, and I've actually watched that holiday special 2 or 3 times probably.
I watched it. You're really starting to see now the international rollout, because they're making, every country's making its own content to appeal to its local audience, to try and get, they've got a big one coming from Britain next week, Extraordinary. I don't know, by the time this comes out, it might be out already on Hulu in the US. We are seeing these shows coming out because we need content as well, to appeal to us. And obviously releasing it internationally, it gets more value. There's a lot of interest in like Korean dramas. You've also got Japanese anime. There is some really good stuff coming out of like all these different countries, and it's really just boosting up. I mean, a lot of it in the US is being put on Hulu, but the amount of international originals that we've seen in 2022, I mean, we're talking probably 20 to 30. There's been a lot.
So then the next thing is, and I skipped over Pixar because Pixar didn't really have a whole lot come out this year. I think I can't remember if Monsters at Work came out in 2021. I think that came out 2022.
Well,
but
it's 2021, but also technically it was a Disney animation and it wasn't Pixar.
You know what? I was looking on Pixar's website the other day and they don't list that one. And I thought, I wondered why. So that, I guess, there you go. So I next is Star and Hulu, which is I watch much less Hulu because it's a separate app. We've talked about before having to leave one app and go to a different app. You stumble across other things that you need to do or watch. But what are some of the things that have stood out to you from Star and Hulu here in the United States?
There's just been so much. I mean, The Dropout was an amazing series. I loved, especially like learning about the American health system, of just how different it is to ours. That was a fascinating series. We also had like Only Murders in the Building, the Orville. I got into Orville this year.
Yes.
And I'm a huge growing up, my dad used to watch. We used to sit there every night and watch Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager. Whatever was on, just so Orville was a great show. So it was kind of like one of those shows that really kind of hit for me. And I'll be honest, my sort of dirty secret show was the Kardashians, because I was watching it with my wife, and we're like, yeah, I never watched Keeping Up with the Kardashians, but the new series was like, well, I'll give it a go, see what it's like. It's like, oh, this is kind of like horrible to watch, but couldn't turn it. So yeah, every night it'd be like Thursday night, like wife would get, we'd have finished dinner, Kardashians, yep, there.
Yeah.
And just things like The Old Man, you had Pistol. Just so many. I'm just looking. I mean, just the list of stuff that we've had last year. Just coming out. I really enjoyed Big Sky. That's another like an ABC series. Welcome to Chippendales. Pam and Tommy. I mean, I know some of these shows I can imagine some American going Pam and Tommy we had adverts on TV and everything. Disney are here on Disney Plus. Pam and Tommy. They made sure they put the 18 certificate on them. And right now, like they held Welcome to Chippendales a couple of months. Big banners in the middle of Piccadilly Circus, big mainstream ads. This is on Disney Plus. None of this kind of worrying about like, is it on brand? No, we Welcome to Chippendales with the dancing and the big Disney Plus logo. Right? They're not worried about it.
Well, and we've talked before about whatever happens in 2024 with Hulu. Eventually, there's going to be either a 6 tab of Hulu or 6 tile of Hulu on Disney Plus, or they're going to I don't know what they'll do with Hulu, if they'll keep it, I think Hulu has enough cachet in the United States possibly that if they changed it to Star, maybe that would be a little confusing for a little bit. So maybe they'll just do that with Hulu. I expect within the next few years for there to, at least in the United States, for there to be 7 tiles with Hulu or Star, whatever they're going to call it, and then ESPN Plus. Because I think they're just going to bring everything into one app. I think at this point, that's what it's been. We've talked about it a long time. I think that's what they need to do.
I think what we're going to end up seeing is we'll have Star as like the international bits and pieces. We'll probably end up with like an FX and the 20th Century Studios and an ABC. I'm still like torn on whether or not Hulu might become like a free service, and they'll run that as their free one, or they might keep the live TV bundle thing going along. But I think at some point they are going to have to, they've set Disney Plus up to do it. You've got the mature content, or they've put the mature content, some of it on there. I mean, it's been pretty lacking in terms of what they've been putting on there. They put the parental controls in there. They've done the ads, so the ad tier is now ready to roll and run. They've put all the technical things in place, and now we just have to wait till next year till they can buy it out. I'm still not 100% sure if they're going to do a full merger, or if Hulu will get sold off, or if it will become a fast. I mean, I could easily see them like turning it maybe into like a Pluto TV kind of situation, where they have access to some stuff and it's free and they can get money off of advertising, because it's I don't know if it's or a full merger. But I think we're going to see it. I think we're going to see a lot of consolidation. We're already seeing like Warner Bros. Like almost pulling out of the streaming platform. I think we're going to see a lot of that.
Yeah. And it's a really good point, especially with the advertising, which is something we're going to talk about next. When you bring in advertising and you bring in the kind of shifting from the subscribers numbers to the profit driven model, how do you do that? And you'll turn on your TV and there's several different free streaming services that, you know, and if I ever watch those, I think like how kind of what's the model for this? You know, how much are they making off of this? How many people are watching? So how much are they getting from ad revenue and everything? So that's a good point. Like with something like Hulu, that could be a possibility that, you know, especially with this shift toward everything needs to be profitable now, you know, maybe they are more likely to try something like that for the ad revenue. Because I don't know what Disney Plus's subscriber growth has been specific to the ad tier. You know, it's been around for about a month now.
Yeah.
And that we'll hear about that in a couple of weeks, right?
Yeah, I expect we'll hear about that in February. The reports are that not as many people have been signing. But I think the trouble is it's very hard of like, it's not necessarily about now, the people that are subscribed now, it's that future people signing up. But also like if, you know, with the recession coming in and all the rest of it, people are gonna, you know, if they're gonna maybe like, well, I won't cancel it, I'll just go down a tier.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I'm at the point now where I'm like, you know what? I've got like Paramount Plus and Amazon and Netflix and WWE and Disney Plus, and I'm like, do I need Paramount Plus?
Yeah.
I'm not really watching a lot on it. I'm like watching Yellowstone, and that's all I'm watching. And it's like, yeah, I don't know if I need it any. And you know, and they're like going, well, okay, Christmas is over. I'm not really using Prime for deliveries. Shall I boot that one? And obviously Disney Plus isn't going anywhere for me because that's my wife has already told me I can't get rid of Netflix. So because I would, because there's not really much on there that I'd watch other than like Stranger Things and The Crown. But that's about it.
Here's a question about when Disney Plus added their tier pricing. Everybody their non-advertisement tier, they increased the price. And the ad tier became what was the old or just original tier pricing. Netflix, when they introduced it, actually introduced it at a lower subscription cost for ads. So with Netflix, if you were, you know, I can't remember what Netflix is now, but whatever you were paying, you kept paying that for non-ads. If you wanted the ad service, you actually went down a couple bucks. Disney Plus did the opposite. What do you think of that strategy, that of Disney Plus increasing their price and Netflix decreasing their price? Do you think there's one, I mean, is it just two different versions, or do you think one is possibly better suited than the other?
I think the ultimate problem was Disney Plus was too cheap. I know people don't like to hear that, but it was priced low to get it in, you know, keep it low and keep. I do think the $3 price rise seemed a lot in one bulk, especially with them not really adding any extra content. When they did that to Europe and like Canada and Australia, they gave a star at the same time. So it was much more easy to kind of like you're like, okay, so it's gone up $2 a month, but we're getting 1,000 more things. It was a lot easier. Whereas in America, it was like, oh, it's $3 more. And here's an episode of Santa Claus. So it's kind of it. But I think the thing is Disney was looking like they were looking to this year and to obviously becoming profitable, where it was on the lines of, yeah, we know you're going to hate it. You know, you're not going to like it, but we can't afford to, you know, we want to get you in, we want to get you used to it. We're not going to give you an extra price rise maybe next year. And I think they just went along the lines of, yeah, we're going to get some feedback, but if you don't, but I think they in some ways was like, well, if you don't like the expensive price, you can still pay the same. They almost made it to the point where it's like, well, yeah, but it's not costing you any more money. I originally thought it was going to be lower because I thought the idea was to get more subs. But then they seem to have gone the opposite way of, rather than doing a cheap version of Disney Plus, they've kind of done this $9.99 deal with Hulu and Disney Plus with ads. And that seems to be their way of, they seem to have gone that direction rather than trying to make Disney Plus cheaper. You get the bundle. I mean, to be honest, I mean, $9.99 for both is a really good deal.
Yeah. And you know what's so interesting to me, and I talk about to the students is, I don't know if you remember when Apple came out with the iPhone C, and you know it was supposed to be a more economical version. the casing was plastic and it was colors, and but they only did it for 1 year because it hurt the prestige of the brand. So, you know, when a person pays a certain price, they pay more for Apple products. They think they're better, whether they are or not, that's debatable. But they think that they're better, and so when they actually introduce something that lowered that price, it didn't really work out that well. Which is why I kind of feel like it's really interesting the tactic that Netflix has taken.
Yeah,
That
and it hasn't worked.
yeah, well, and I don't think, you know, there's not subscribers. I don't think there's many subscribers for Netflix that are gonna like say, well, instead of $15.99 a month, I'm gonna go to pay $12.99 a month or whatever the ad tier is.
I think it's like
I think it's kind of
$4.99. It's quite cheap.
it's what?
So I think it's only about $4.99, but like a load of stuff isn't available.
Oh, really? Okay.
And it's
Well,
really restrictive, like 720. You can't download stuff one screen at a time. It's a really like very restricted version of it, to the
yeah.
point where I think most people are like, yeah, that's just too restrictive.
Well, and see that, especially with all of that, because I didn't know all of that was happening, especially with all of those restrictions. How is it going to have a big negative impact on the Netflix brand overall? That, you know, and
Yeah.
that's something we won't see for months and possibly 18
Yeah.
months or something. But
I would probably say the introduction of an ad tier probably wouldn't have impacted so much because it was so cheap and most
mhm,
people didn't move there. I think their biggest problem right now is actually the cancellations of everything that they're canceling. So I think there's
mhm,
people starting to like question, like, well, everything we're watching, you're canceling. That's probably going to have a much bigger impact long term. But then if they can start signing up and getting some shows from Sony, Warner
mhm.
Brothers, and some other networks, that might be where they can start pulling some stuff back in. But I think the cancellations of shows will probably have a longer impact than actually the price
Yeah.
impact.
Yeah. That's a good point. The next thing that I want to talk about is that shift from subscriber numbers and subscriber growth being like that was the only metric that mattered. I remember talking to someone during the earlier days of the lockdown or pandemic, and asking about like what is the metric for success? And I remember people saying, really right now, whether it makes sense or not, it's just subscriber growth. How many subscribers can you get? And then within this last year, as everybody knows, we've seen this shift, this wholesale shift based, as we were talking before we started filming or recording, based pretty much on like one earnings call from Netflix. We saw this huge shift to now, oh, it's not subscriber growth anymore. Now it's profitability, and it's profit per head, profit per subscriber. Um, what do you make of this wholesale shift? It's almost like this, you know, it's like shiny object was the subscriber growth, and then as soon as they saw that a big company lost subscribers, now we have to shift. Is this just how reactionary entertainment
Yeah.
is, and even Wall Street is, or is there something else going on?
I think there's multiple like layers in it. I think stock prices, the shares, they're just looking to make a quick buck.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, they want to, they want to buy it cheap, sell it high. And that's so when that Netflix kind of thing came in and like, oh, we've not growing, and the trouble is, it was a bit like a slow moving car. You could see that this was going to
Mm-hmm.
happen because we'd had the pandemic where the speed of like we'd literally had like 10 years of growth for streaming in 1 year.
Yeah.
It accelerated beyond because we're all sat at home. We couldn't do anything but stream. So yeah, how many of us signed up to extra streaming services because you had the time? You couldn't
Yeah.
do anything. So ultimately, once we started being allowed out and it started coming into the summer, people were looking to cut subscribers, but also there was less people to subscribe because
Yeah.
most people had signed up. I mean, and I remember when it all happened, getting my in-laws and my parents, they were all, I got them all signed in and
Yep.
using it and, signed up and stuff. There's so many more people that got signed up for stuff because we were in the pandemic. And then of course you didn't need it. And there was almost that kind of weird thing like, oh, you're not growing the same. Wouldn't I mean, I think,
Yeah.
was it Pentalon had the same problem where, they exploded, and then suddenly when everyone could go back out on their bikes again, they
Yeah.
started selling less. And then people go, oh, I didn't expect this to happen. You could know
Yeah.
that was going to happen. The pandemic was always going to I look at like Disney Plus. I mean, I had an incredible, I mean, in here, like in the UK, it launched the week after we went into lockdown. It
Okay.
literally launched at the point of, because it was about 6 months later, it launched. You couldn't have had a better time to launch a streaming platform of, oh, everyone's locked up. Here you go. So here's something, and it was, I think that was the problem. Disney was very open in there right from before Disney Plus even launched back in 2019 that it was going to take till 2024 until it was profitable. And they adjusted that, the speed of which it grew was, and it grew globally at that because of that. There's only so many more countries left they can launch in. They've not launched a lot in 2022, actually. They've been a bit, they're able to, but that's going to run out.
Yeah.
And I think the trouble is, I think it was almost like people, people maybe were listening to what was going on, but weren't really taking in the detail of like, well, this is going to end. This is, it's like, they're talking about, all the big studios suddenly got hit, and we're seeing like Warner Brothers Discovery going for a massive reshuffle because the streaming platform, the way the people that were running it before were going on assumptions based on Netflix.
Yeah.
And then Netflix crumbled, and suddenly the entire industry just collapsed. I mean, Netflix shares went, I think they were like, what's like $700 or something like that. They just dropped like $300-400, and they've never recovered. And Disney went down, and Comcast went down, and Warner Brothers went down. But sometimes there's a lot more attention just on the Disney stock than all the other ones. But it was, again, shiny new things, then a real shift to them to trying to make profit, which is why I think we've seen changes with Disney Plus of why that price rise. I mean, they announced that in August, and it didn't come in until December, and people were in December were going, they've just put they announced this 4 months ago. We knew it wasn't like one of like HBO Max did last week. Oh, Last of Us is coming out, it's $1 more now. It was like they just jacked the price up the day before the show came out with no notice. So they weren't, they gave 4 months notice. But I think, again, the ad tier, everything is there to kind of get it into position. A lot of the costs were left over from the pandemic in terms of making shows. Basically they made like 2 years worth of shows in 1 year, so all the costs was thrown in on that. And they were spending a fortune on content. I think as someone with Star, I could say very easily, like, because I don't think in America you might not realize of like, well, FX, ABC, Freeform, Disney Channel, National Geographic, Hulu, and Disney Plus are all making content. Here in the UK, we only have one, so it all goes into one. So therefore, you start looking at it again. Do you need this many shows? Because you put, some weeks we were getting 12 to 15 new shows a week on Disney Plus. So you're like going, well, did we really need it? Was, and it's great, but you do look at it and go, this is unsustainable as a model.
And I mean, we talked before we started recording, like there had to have been conversations within each of these companies that basically people saying, look, we're playing the game now, but we know how reactionary all of this is, and we know how reactionary entertainment is, how investing is. This is going to run out at some point. And I just have to think that there were people who said, before this runs out, maybe we should start trying to shift slowly so we are not completely taken by surprise, or it seems like we're taken by surprise. But that really didn't seem to, the public image, that didn't seem to happen as much. I don't know.
But the other problem as well was there was the issue of, in the pandemic, like Wall Street was looking at streamers as that's the only thing running. So therefore that is the business to invest in because they're making money. That's the only thing making money. Disney Plus, in like 2021 and 2022 or 2020, Disney Plus was considered the golden goose of Disney. It was the only thing bringing in money because the parks were closed, the cinemas were closed. It was the only thing running. So it was worth, you went all in on it. But they still had they weren't making any money because it was still had all the startup costs. Of course, in 2022, the theme parks have been incredible with Revenge Travel. and people just going out because they've been locked up, and the parks bounced back really well.
Yeah.
And if you look at like cinemas, you got to look at like, it wasn't really till like, I mean, yeah, we had like Spider-Man No Way Home, but generally most of the films, they really didn't start picking up steam until the second half of last year.
Yeah.
I mean, look at like Avatar: The Way of Water. How long the cinema's only really, and even now cinema is massively down on the year before.
Yeah.
Studios aren't back, and it's kind of that weird thing of like, suddenly like you said, the investors are looking at it going, they're not making any money. Well, no, because they've only been back like
Yeah.
6 months, and they lost 18 months worth of income.
Yeah.
It's I think, again, there's a lot of just like, the pandemic was over and they just went straight into the idea of everything's back to normal, and then we've hit, we've had we've got a massive war going on that's pushed up the costs of everything. I mean, especially here in Europe.
Yeah.
It was interesting enough, Disney didn't put the price up here back in December, because we're in a cost of, they didn't, it would have been a bad look to have done that. Costs are just getting out of control, and suddenly then it's like, we aren't over with, this is the repercussions of the pandemic,
Yeah.
and we're still dealing with it. And I feel like some of it is a little bit like, just, oh, well, we're not looking at it. We don't want to, even the old thing right now, or that's not an excuse anymore.
Yeah.
Well, it still is
Yeah.
a legitimate excuse of what this, like this past week, to go, we're putting housekeeping back into deluxe resorts in Disney World. Well, you kind of would have thought, like, that would have, if you said that 4 years ago, no one would even believe that it was still an issue. But we're still having those effects years later.
Yeah. Well, and I think because of the pandemic, I think I saw a figure that it was costing 25 to 30% more to make programming because of everything that they were having to do with the precautions. And, like here in the United States, at least, everything was Bob Chapek's fault, that now,
the toilet paper runs out and he did it.
Yeah. They announced that housekeeping's coming back to deluxe resorts. It's like, oh, thank you, Bob Iger. And it's like, well, I'm not really sure. I'm happy he's back also, but I'm not really sure that's the necessarily his deal. And I think on that note, like, just a side note, he has benefited and will benefit. Like, the history of the Walt Disney Company for the last 40 years has been, when there's been a change in CEO, it's because something bad has happened. With the, Eisner came in and kind of was seen as like, he can't do anything wrong, at least for the first 10 years. And then his last 10 years, by the time that ended, it was like, well, Bob Iger coming in, he can't do any worse. Iger leaving, Chapek was really set up in a really difficult situation. And now Iger's coming back and saying like, oh, well, everything Bob Iger does has to be great because of the situation. He's benefited twice from when he became CEO.
Yeah. It's weird with Iger, because I did literally throw Chapek under the bus. He'd like, we've just lost Shanghai and we're about to get hit by a pandemic. Okay, I'm off.
Yeah.
Bye. And Chapek, like a week later, closes down everything. And he had to do, and I feel like, especially in the beginning, I think Chapek was probably putting somebody in that will cut costs is probably the perfect person to put in a pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
He was needed at that time. Year one, he had the grace of like the pandemic was going on and all the rest of it. But going into this, but in 2022, it then started to, his cost cutting was starting to impact on the parks, on everything. The Chapek effect of microtransactions at the parks, nickel and diming.
I had never heard that said. The Chapek effect. I've never heard that. That's
it's constantly the Chapek. That was kind of and it was that kind of thing of him just, he was getting blamed for everything wrong with Disney. And some of it you were there going, come on, of like, this is, they have to do. I mean, there was a lot of expectations, I think, for the parks just to click back a button and everything was just going to reset to pre-pandemic. And it was like, it wasn't going to work like that. They definitely made some mistakes. I mean, they are rolling back some of the things. of how it worked. I mean, I know when I was out in California for D23, I went to Disney, and it's just the price of everything.
Yeah.
But then I went to Vegas, and it was even more expensive.
Yeah.
And I'm a bit like, everyone, you're all complaining about Disneyland, but Vegas is even more expensive than it's like everything's just gone up. And sometimes people don't quite, especially as a tourist, you notice it much more when you just like, oh yeah, the prices was like, I think having did that trip to Vegas was like going, oh yeah, Disney's not just got more everywhere out there, it's got more expensive, and you noticed it more.
I there's writing on it, like in management, not just literature, but like trades and everything. And I'm starting to think maybe this is actually what Disney did. The idea that you do bring in somebody who is a cost cutter, and you bring in, and the idea that somebody comes in and they are supposed to cut cost. They're supposed to be the person who makes the very difficult, unpopular decisions. And then after 18 months or 2 years, they're gone. And then you kind of reset. And like now that everything has come out, it's kind of like, well, I don't know, was that kind of what Disney was doing? It doesn't seem like they've done it in the past, but was that something they were doing because they saw something, this looming pandemic coming, and these cost cuts and everything?
However, I don't necessarily think. I was going to say, I don't necessarily think. I mean, they could have seen it all coming, but he was definitely the fall guy. He is the guy they can blame for anything. I mean, they paid him off 25 million for it. I mean, I'd be quite happy to take the blame for it myself for that.
Well, he's getting 20 more million this year, I think. I think what I recently what I read is he would get another bit this year. So I think ultimately, though, at least from the public perception, what led to him being gone, I mean, there's all the insider stories about Bob Iger still being there and talking to people and not giving up his executive office. But by the way, if Disney Plus ever wants a like real adult drama, this is like the second book of Disney War. They could do like a series called Disney War off the first book, and this would be the second season of it. But like, I think like now it's come out with like we're with the activist investors and him meeting with Nelson Peltz and everything. I think maybe that was kind of they saw that as their light to say, okay, we can now move on, because like once this comes out, maybe people will understand it a little bit more. On that note, Disney now is dealing with a proxy war, or the beginnings possibly of a proxy war, with Nelson Peltz, an activist investor who wants to be on the board. They dealt with one early 2021 with Dan Loeb. And my question to you is like, I haven't heard much about activist investors in Disney in the past, other than, when there's been a change in CEO in the past. It's usually seems to have been something that's more or less come from the inside. And how prevalent is, because you're someone who follows this outside of Disney as well, how prevalent is activist investors trying to get in and make their money? And is that really, is it the overall negative thing that it really seems like it is?
Because I mean, I don't. I mean, that kind of thing is like, I mean, I hadn't really heard too much about these kind of extremist investors till Lob came up, and it's kind of this weird situation of it. Kind of feels a little bit like opportunistic, kind of coming in when the stock's low, buy up a lot of stuff, hit them when they're low to try and get some more money out. Ultimately, these investors, they want to make money, and they want to make money quick. If they can get the dividend up, get the stock, if they can double the stock, triple the stock, they'll jump. They've got no interest in this thing. I feel like this whole thing with the Restore the Magic, he's using terms that Disney fans that have got shares will like, because we've been hearing about that, you know, Disney's lost the magic, and he's kind of playing on this kind of thing of, without, when you look at the actual, this massive slide deck that he put out, they're going, yeah, you're pointing out all the negatives, but you're not telling us how you're going to fix any of this stuff. And just in this pipe dream of like, I mean, one of the things was like, they should either buy Hulu or get out of streaming.
Yeah.
I'm like what? And I mean, Disney literally turned around and were like, this guy doesn't know what he doesn't know our business. He doesn't understand. It's like, you want to get out of streaming because of like, and it was just like, yeah, you don't know the rest of the world doesn't have, you know, like there's more subscribers outside of the US than there is in the US. And it was just like, wow, just like, you really haven't got a clue about media. It's just, he just, and I mean, we were joking, you know, it just, to me, the other guy, Dan Lobb, when he come in, you know, talking about Hulu and ESPN and like wanting to off, you know, there was like, he was coming in with like, here's how I want you to kind of maybe think about trying to fix this problem. And that's what he wanted to do. He wasn't like talking about, you know, like restore, you know, all these other bits of pieces. And he then put out like, I think they gave him some kind of advisory thing, and then they were like, completely backed off, when I'm guessing they sat down and had a proper discussion about what they're doing, and he was fine with it. But this, I mean, the fact that this guy's been having, Bouts has been having meetings with them for 6-8 months, and then it started this full-blown war because they basically said to him, no, we don't want you, you're no good to us, go away. And then he's trying to like, basically, I feel like, manipulate diehard Disney fans into giving him his vote over a promise that he's not even making, just on the title. If when you actually look at it and go, it's headline reading on social media rather than getting into that big slide deck to find out what the details are.
It feels like when Dan Loeb made his recommendations, they were actually, they led to thought-provoking conversations, because it has long been, you know, that I can't tell you how many podcast episodes and just other discussions I listened to, or discussions I had about like, would Disney ever actually sell off ESPN? And why is it not a good idea for Disney to sell off ESPN? Or why should they sell off portions of this? And so it led to these thought-provoking conversations, which, by the way, I still don't think, at least for the foreseeable future, Disney needs to sell off ESPN or ABC. I think there's still so much money coming in, even though it's diminishing over year from ESPN. I still think there's so much money coming in. And if they did ever sell it off, it seems as though, we're going to talk about next, more streaming services are getting into providing live sports entertainment on their service. So if they sold that off, you're selling off what essentially is one of the most well-known sport entertainment brands in the world. You're essentially you're going to have to look for content somewhere else, and you're probably going to end up spending more money. But it feels like, you know, the way Disney, and this could have been the way because of under Chapek and now under Iger, but the way Disney reacted to Dan Loeb with the conversations and the way they are reacting to Nelson Peltz seems very, very different, you know?
Oh, it's like night and day, isn't it?
Yeah. And I also think, you know, if it ever came to the shareholders and the Disney fans, I think at least for now, Disney fans are so high on a cloud with that Iger's back. I don't, you know, I think he has a while of a honeymoon period with fans. So I don't see anything happening in the intermediate, right, or the short term.
I definitely feel like, had this Chapek still been in power, this thing could have been a much bigger play, but with Iger back, everyone, again, like you said, there's this thing of, well, he's changing stuff, and people, and Disney is saying to him, we've got all these plans, we just haven't told you yet. And you know, we're probably going to find out in a couple of weeks, but it's like, unfortunately, this proxy wars, in some ways, it feels a little bit like he feels like he's got to shoot now, otherwise he's hasn't got a chance. And like you said, it just doesn't seem, he's not got the right timing, because Iger, you know, he's bringing back the magic, and he's doing what most, and you know, I think ESPN's always this like weird thing of, as a non-sports fan, I mean, I watch wrestling and like a bit of UFC. there's a lot of what gets me with ESPN is, you know, a third of Disney's budget, I think it was like 10+ billion a year, is spent on sports rights, and they don't even own it. It's
Yeah.
not like you've got that, you buy that football game, well, you own that footage for the rest of your life, and it's global, and you own it. You know, like when they make, you know, like, you know, the Mandalorian, that's theirs. They can
Yeah.
use it in every country, they can do what they want, but you spend that much money on a football game, you don't even own the football game,
Yeah.
and you only own it for the US. You know, some of the numbers being thrown around for sports is just incredible amounts of money.
Yeah. And so on that note, it does seem like more and more streaming services are getting into live sports entertainment.
Mm.
And as best I can make sense of it, the real value in live sports entertainment, even though it is a smaller portion of the pie as far as consumers who, or people who actually watch sport. And then, you know, if you ask people who are if you ask the general population who are sports fans, you're going to get about 45%. And then within that, you know, you might get 25% who are fans of football, 30% who are fans of soccer, or like international football, you know, in the United States. You know, you might get like 5% who say they want to watch Major League Baseball or the NHL, or 20%. And so it's a much smaller number, but it still does, because of the way in the United States that things are structured, it still brings in so much ad revenue. And that's the most important thing for these streaming services, especially now that things have to be so profitable, and they need to be profitable now.
Yeah.
And so what do you think the role is what's the role of live sports entertainment on streaming services?
I mean, the thing is with sport is it is a huge driver of views. Recently, the big NFL wild card game aired last Monday, you know, with the Ant. I mean, I don't know about it because the Ant-Man and the Wasp trailer was but it apparently it broke, like, it was the most watched football game since 1999, and I put that down to the Ant-Man trailer. But you know, people watching sport is big. We've recently, you know, we've had the World Cup in Qatar, you know, that had brought in massive numbers here in the UK. In cricket in like India, it's a massive draw. You know, you have the Super Bowl, obviously, is big. So yes, yeah, so eyeballs on, gets lots of advertising. It's profit. That's where they make. That's why they're spending so much money on it. Is because they get the eyeballs. And I think, but the thing is, you're seeing all the streaming services, they're all playing with this sports stuff. You know, you're seeing Apple do it, Amazon do it. I mean, just, you know, just this past week, like Warner Brothers got the Olympics kind of thing. So they're all fighting for the sports because they know it brings in a lot of audiences, but they're trying to, but in some way now we're in this like weird bit where they're all trying to work out how do we make money from it.
Yeah.
They're all trying different things. Amazon have talked about even spinning off the sports into a separate app. I think Apple have done the same with baseball, and they're trying to get in. Like, I think today there were some reports of them trying to get in on Premier League. The NFL, that's, I think one of the sports day tickets has gone to YouTube. The trouble is, like with the NFL, it's got to the point where each night is too expensive for one platform to actually buy all of them. You can't have, no platform can afford to buy all the rights to NFL anymore because it's just got, so they're all having a nice. I know, like with the WWE, the sports rights for Fox and USA Network and so on, and it's on Disney Plus in some countries like the Philippines and Indonesia, is they make more money on that than they do on the live events, and it's eyeballs on it. It's just, they're all trying just to grab market share, trying to keep people interested, trying to offer something. I think they're looking to a way of getting rid of ESPN because it's just like, well, that's worth this amount of money and you owe this amount of money. So if you get rid of that, it'll wipe that out. And we don't, and the trouble is, if you are maybe not into sports, or you maybe don't understand it in the same way, I'll be honest, I'm in that category. You can look at it and go, well, what's the point? You know, I would rather spend 10 billion on making 25 new series and 20 movies. Sports to me, like, well, I don't own it, so why I'm basically renting a football game. So I can see, but I also feel like there is a place for sport. as someone that watched Welcome to Wrexham, and I don't even like soccer, but I watched that series. There is something about sport which brings people in, and they're all just trying to find the right or the magic sauce to kind of make money out of it. And I think you're just going to see sport just spread over everything, and just, or it'll end up all going the opposite. But we're probably a decade away because everyone's paying so much money for long-term deals, that nothing's going to be changing probably for a while now.
Yeah, like, the way I have viewed broadcast rights in the past is they've always been a loss leader. Like, you're a network, you pay, you pay $1 billion plus to broadcast live sports entertainment, and that's a loss leader because that is bringing in viewers. I'm not sure that it's bringing in more viewers than like what the cost is, but it's bringing in advertising dollars, so that helps with that, and you're able to advertise your other products and your other content. The really interesting thing for me with streaming is, and you said like they're trying to figure out basically the money of it. If you're going to pay multi-billion dollars for the NFL or the Premier League, or where does that cost come from? Where do you recoup some of that cost? Is it through ads? Because that's what has really been the process for recouping that in the past. So do you, as a subscriber, does everybody's subscription rates get raised? I don't know the appetite for that for people who aren't fans of sport.
Yeah.
If you're a fan of sport, do you pay a premium price like Apple TV is doing with Major League Soccer in the United States? I imagine that's probably what they would do if they get the Premier League, is make people pay an added price on top of that. Or, I guess a third option is maybe maybe subscription prices aren't raised, but when you are watching a live sporting event, like on Disney Plus, even if you pay for the non-ad service, when you're watching a sporting event, are ads included in that? Because they have to recoup their money some way. So I guess there could be three options maybe.
Well, they have actually changed I think they changed the terms and conditions on Disney Plus, where like live things can have like they couldn't quite, I don't think they could quite do it with Dancing with the Stars because it was before the ad tier launched, but some things, I notice it a lot more when I'm watching like the WWE premium live events, and I'm watching them a lot live or the next day. I'm getting all these ads for like Geico and all these, they don't even exist in this country, but I have to sit through these ads. And you really notice it so much more when I'm watching the live American stream compared to like the YouTube clips or bits and pieces, because that's all been stripped out because it doesn't make it, they're not paying for it. They're gonna have to do a combination. There is also, I think we're gonna probably see, I would love to see ESPN Plus as a paid add-on within Disney Plus, like they've done with Hulu. So maybe you get like the 30 for 30 documentary, so you can and maybe even because they give some free games away on like ABC and stuff sometimes. Give you some freebies, this will be free for everybody, but you pay extra for it, because if it's $9.90, I think ESPN Plus is like $9.99 a month. But if that gets folded into Disney Plus just straight, well, what do you think that $10 is going to have to go up? So everyone's going to pay. I personally wouldn't want to pay. I think like here in the UK, like Discovery Plus had the Eurosport add-on, and you had to pay extra for that. But some of them, like Amazon, weren't doing it, and you can see them all like trying, because they know that streaming, we've got used to really low prices, and I don't think we can go back to the days of because I know like in the US, ESPN was kind of, you had to include it in a bundle so that's why cable was always so expensive. Here in the UK, like if you had Sky Satellite, you could get the sports package, the film package, and the entertainment package. So you could get Sky for £20 a month, or you could get the full bundle for like 40, 50. If you want sports, it's like another 20, and they had bundles. And I think we're much more likely to go into add-ons, rather than, if they try and put everything into one, it's just going to put the price up. And we're in that thing of like they're forced bundles, and I think the world's changed.
Yeah.
And I think people are looking at it differently. Of ESPN Plus as a premium sports brand, they're going to have to do something with it. I think incorporating it into Disney Plus, it would just put the price. I mean, if people are if people are moaning about $10.99, you're going to be hitting $20, $30 a month, and that's then not very good if none of the other ones do it. They all have to do it in order to make it worthwhile.
And I how long do you think it is until somebody comes along, either a Disney or a tech company? We talked about how much more tech companies are worth than entertainment companies. How long do you think it is until one entity comes along and bundles everything back together, and it's this great grand new idea that it's basically you can get everything you ever want in one place, and it's the cable model, except it's streaming? How long do you think it is till if we ever do that?
Well, I don't think we're actually I think we're there, because what they're actually doing is there's a lot of companies are trying to become the gateway.
Yeah.
You get Amazon are doing it, Roku are trying to do it. I'm Sky here, like on my Sky Q box, on my satellite box. I have my Sky TV, which it's basically like a combination of Peacock and HBO.
Okay.
But I can get Netflix and I can get Disney Plus, and they've just announced that Discovery Plus is now being included in my bundle. So I access it all through the one app, and they make a cut if I subscribe through them. They're going to go this way round of like you can have it. I think we are going to see a lot of consolidation. I think we're going to see a lot of the smaller ones. I don't think they're going to get brought up. I think there's always been this. Oh, they just get brought. No, they're going to close because they're not making money. That's going to be and then they'll license out their content. I think we're not. I don't think any Comcast and Disney are not going to play with each other.
Yeah.
They're all going to want to. They all want to control it. And with direct to consumer, they can control that information and that money so much more than I don't think Disney want to go back to giving Comcast cable money. They don't want to go back to that system. They might give them Apple take a cut when you buy it through their app, and they know that they're going to have to get it out there, but they can get it out there much easier than before.
Especially with there's such fierce competition between the Walt Disney Company and Comcast Corporation on so many different levels. Those companies, you're more likely to see some combination of cooperation between other companies.
But then even they do, they just do their carriage deals. They know they need each other.
Like it's one of those things that you have to you compete, but you have to cooperate whenever you have to cooperate. Whenever there's money to be made, people cooperate. Whenever and then people try to take their money separate ways, keep it from each other as much as they can. But the last thing I have written down is you're a big WWE fan. This last week, well, I guess it was 2 weeks ago, Vince McMahon announced he was coming back and as CEO with the purpose of overseeing some clean transaction, I think, as they put it. And then
it was kind of a bit weird, because it was a bit like he wanted to oversee the selling of the network, again, the network and streaming rights for the WWE. So it was a bit like, again, he didn't trust it was so valuable, he didn't trust anybody else. And the sell kind of thing is a little bit of a carrot. It was a little bit like, well, we're looking into we're investigating it. They didn't really kind of say we're not up for sale, but we're putting it on the market just to kind of get some prices.
And then last week it was reported that there's reports that Bob Iger and the president of ESPN actually did meet with some of the members of WWE. What do you think the future of WWE is? Do you think they will it's selling the network, or do you think a company like Disney, and since this is a Disney podcast, do you think Disney would ever purchase WWE?
I think the fact that the two CEOs met It's very much like, okay, they're interested. There's a couple of ways to look at it, and it's kind of funny because when this got brought up, we did some articles and did some videos and stuff, and I had a lot of like Americans kind of going, "It's on Peacock, so Comcast should buy it," and it's like, yeah, but in India and
Yeah.
in other countries, Disney Plus has got
Yeah.
WWE. Hulu has WWE. Disney and Hulu, they're making a new show with Bianca Belair and one of the Street Profits. They're doing stuff together, so it's not, and they're getting data, especially like from like Indonesia.
Hmm.
So they're getting the data from this. ESPN is constantly in need of new content, and it would be content they own.
Yeah.
Unlike any other thing else, when they do Raw and SmackDown, they would own the rights to it. They would own that content. It is literally this the kind of thing doesn't come up very often to buy a whole platform. I mean, Disney's just got the licenses for the whole worldwide streaming and linear for XFL, which
Yeah.
was a WWE thing. These things don't come up very often. You can't do that with football and NFL and
Yeah.
tennis and stuff. You can't just buy it. So this is a really unique situation. There's different people being involved in who's going to buy it, who might not be. Personally, from my point of view, if it's going to be sold to somebody, it might as well be Disney. They brought everything else I like, so why not? It's like if somebody's going to buy it, I personally would have liked them to stay independent and been run by Stephanie and Shane and just kind of keep it as a family business. I think that would have been better, and sell it to whoever pays the most. The thing is, I think there's also that, and it's the same thing of what happened with 20th Century Studios. Of there's still that core, primarily American Disney audience that kind of, and I had comments going, it's too violent. They can't.
Yeah.
It's not. It's family values, and like they own. They you kind of Disney are looking now at they're an entertainment company.
Yeah.
That's more than just Mickey Mouse cartoons, because Mickey Mouse has gone to them pretty much from next year. With they have to look at different ways of moving forward, and it's kind of funny. I think again, like from my point of view, going, well, actually, they're already dealing with each other. They've got data, they've got that information, they're working on projects. They've had the data from Hulu for years. They know the value of it. They've got a sports network that would vastly could do with it. They could put it on ABC in the US. It's like there's a lot of benefits from Disney's point of view. And all the library that would be great on ESPN. It's just I'd look at it. There is no downside from Disney's point of view to getting it. Yeah, okay, it's going to cost some billions to get hold of it, but again, it's like as long as they got the right people running it and making it better. I certainly don't want Tony Khan from AEW to buy it, because we need competition. We need the two competition makes each other better.
Yeah.
When we went back to the days of WCW brought out, it kind of ruined it for years because there was no competition. So I think from Disney's point of view, it definitely just makes it. There's like it's a win-win-win-win. And so they might not be in the zone right now of making purchases, but when a good offer comes up, you gotta at least. The fact that they've met was like, okay, we're in a zone at this point. It might come to nothing, but there's some skin in the game at this point. I'm using some sports references here.
Well, and I mean, Bob Iger is the acquisition CEO. That's what he's known for. So, I think in the United States, because there is some resistance to it, and I think some people view it as, well, it's not Pixar, it's not on the level of Pixar or Marvel or Lucasfilm, but it's still like I think of it as, yes, ESPN always needs more content, and this I imagine would be something included on ESPN Plus, but you look at the number of current and former entertainers in WWE that have done projects or are currently working on projects with Disney. And this would just be a not brand new, but this would be a way to expand, not only bring in some additional consumers, but expand content as well. If you own it now, well, now you have better inroads for all these other entertainment options to develop all these projects with with different entertainers. And I didn't know that NXT is actually
Yeah,
at Full Sail University, which is in
yeah.
Orlando. Because
That literally, yeah, yeah. I was
I
literally going to say that.
I asked a colleague, I said, well, what if they bought it and then they had different events? They wouldn't have WrestleMania and stuff. Those would still be like at the arena
Yeah.
where the Magic play. But what if they had things at Wide World of Sports? You could do that. And my colleague said,
Yeah.
well,
Well,
NXT is actually
yeah.
in Orlando. So they would be able to do stuff. And I don't know if they would, move it from
Well,
Full Sail or they would make an agreement or what, but go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, WCW used to actually film shows at the Hollywood Studios at Disney in Orlando. So they actually used to shoot them there. Impact Wrestling used to, and I don't know if AEW did, but they used to film at Universal Studios constantly. They were always filming there. So that used to be a big part of it. So yeah, they would actually, it would be. I went to they used to have a restaurant in New York in the middle of Times Square. They even had, I went to Niagara Falls, and they even used to have a shop there with a ride, WWE ride, and all
Okay.
kinds of, so it's like for me, like I've already seen them do this. They ended up
Yeah.
closing them all down because they obviously didn't make enough money. But it's like, yeah, you could put a WWE store in, in Disney
Yeah.
Springs, and they could sell merch. You could have a themed restaurant. You could put a ride in like a roller coaster, or you could, not necessarily do the wrestling. I mean, I know when I went to last time I went to Orlando, I did look up, like, is there any wrestling going on, and do it all.
Yeah.
It's a big thing. There's a lots of other layers to it. That's just, and again, they've made animated. There's been cartoons, there's been movies. There was a Scooby-Doo movie with, there's there's reality TV shows. There's a whole host of other things that they can do, and yeah, some people still look at wrestling very differently, but there's it's an entertainment thing. It's so different than any other sport.
Yeah. Well, and for also the people who say that, and this is, I heard from somewhere else, somebody said this first, but for people who say that WWE is too violent, it's like, well, Disney is involved with like the NFL, which is unfortunately, is a very violent sport, and they are involved with NHL, which is a violent sport, and all the
UFC,
yeah, UFC, they have kind of, they have done this in the past, so it wouldn't be off brand like a lot of some people have said it would be.
I think the biggest thing is, and this is something I think we're seeing a lot more in the last like 10 years, especially as social media and stuff has come in. Disney, we used to have everything in boxes, and they used to have these brands, and nobody knew they were connected. Nobody knew that Touchstone or Hollywood Pictures or ESPN or ABC was Disney. They kind of were able to keep them all separate. And but as the world's got smaller, but also they've had to adapt to the world of other studios all doing the same thing. The concept of what is Disney is so much bigger than it was, and some people are still struggling with the name takes them back to a nostalgia, and it's like that company hasn't existed for like 30-40 years, because it's not just new. I mean, we're like, I remember when the acquisition of Marvel and Star Wars, people were like, they can't do that. Like, they brought ABC, most people didn't even know ESPN was theirs.
Yeah. And I feel like of all the acquisitions, the ABC Capital Cities with ESPN is the most important, because that kind of started a lot of stuff that brought in a lot more consumers, that brought in a ton of revenue that they could use in other places. I mean, they used it to build parks, and they used it to build, new resorts in different parts of the world and everything. So the rapid questions that I have to finish up are, what are you most looking forward to in 2023 on Disney Plus or on Star? And so we'll just go down again with these rapid style. You can explain, discuss. You don't have to explain if you don't want. What are you most looking forward to from Pixar?
I'd probably say win or lose, just to see what they're doing with the series. I'm gonna be honest. Baseball, I'm not really interested. The story isn't really of any interest to me. I couldn't care less, but I'm interested to see how they do a series.
Okay. How about Marvel? And I know Marvel's a little up in the air because there were going to be like 6 things, and
There was
now
going to
maybe there's going to be 3, and
there was going
now
to be yeah, there was 5 scheduled for this year, and technically they haven't changed anything. But it looks like Coven of Chaos and maybe Echo might get
yeah,
shifted back a little bit. Just I think they found they've been releasing too much stuff and people
yeah.
are a little bit burnt out. For me personally, Secret Invasion is the show I'm most looking forward to. I
Okay,
love the comic book, so that one's my one.
okay. What about with Lucasfilm?
I'd say Skeleton Crew. If it makes this year, again, that might be pushed back. It's still kind of scheduled for this year. Something new, something different, new characters, new world. Should be interesting.
Okay, and then what about original program that could be something that would be on Disney Plus proper or on Star?
It might not make 2023, but Percy Jackson and the Olympians. I've never seen the
Okay.
original movies, never read the books. So much interest in this one. That one's very much in the high zone of what I'm looking at. Wish. I think that's going to be a theatrical film. That one should be a little bit of fun. Um, yeah, I think that's I think Percy Jackson, if it makes this year, I'm just looking forward to just watching something different. I
Yeah.
want to see something new.
Okay. And then last one, what do you think 2023 is going to look like for Disney Plus? So when we talk again next year, what do you what's going to be your opening line, you think? How have they performed?
I think this year is gonna be a little bit about some consolidation. I think we're gonna see some cuts, some shifts. We might not necessarily notice it because I think it might be some of the stuff that was due out might get pushed back,
Mhm.
but then the production's now fully up, so we don't notice it the same way. I think we're just gonna see a little bit
Okay.
less Marvel, a little bit less Star Wars. Um, I think they're going to realize that they've overcooked it with too much, too many series, too many episodes, and I think we're going to see a little bit less. I'm just hoping at some point we get a clearer idea of what the plan is with Hulu and Disney Plus.
Yeah.
We could still be here this time next year, and we still are waiting. Now we're going. It's 2024, and they can do the
Yeah.
deal, but they still have to do the deal. Just more. I just like to see them. I think they're also going to need to use up maybe sharing stuff between Hulu and Disney a little bit more. But I think we're going to see just a general slowdown in production and releases, and when they realize actually how much they're spending on content.
Do you think do you think they will hit the profitability projection?
Oh, well, they're still got another year, so they could still make. I think we're going to see a lot less. I think it's going to be much better. The only trouble is if they make that Hulu deal, it throws all the books right off
Yeah.
again, so they won't be in profit. So, there's a kind of an issue with that. I don't think they're going to do it this year, but I think we're going to be much more profitable. They've already started. All of the Disney Channel and National Geographic stuff is all being shared between linear and streaming, so it makes the books look a little bit better.
Okay. All right. And those are the questions I have. Again, Roger, thanks. It's always awesome to get your insight on this. Tell everybody the best places to see your content.
They can obviously check us out over at whatsondisneyplus.com. You can find us on YouTube. We have a weekly podcast. We also have Twitter, Facebook, so plenty of ways to kind of keep up with us, constantly keeping up with all the news. But yeah, if you go to the website, whatsondisneyplus.com, you'll find all the links and bits and pieces there.
Last year when we talked, you said you are no longer able to watch every original series that Disney puts out or on Disney Plus. What percentage do you think you're able to watch now?
I'm probably about 60-70%.
Okay.
I'm generally no. My biggest problem is this: we've got this weird problem sometimes where they will release stuff internationally much later than it's been out in the US. And so from my point of view, it's a bit like if it's been out for 3 months already, it's kind of dead on arrival. The interest is not going to be there for me to cover it the same way. So therefore, I might not cover it. That's one issue.
Yeah.
And sometimes, and also here in the UK, we don't find out really what we're getting till the day it comes out.
Okay. Okay.
It's like literally like yesterday we had a big list of about 60 things coming to the US.
Okay.
We had the UK list drop while I've been doing this. I had a quick check. three things in. It's a bit like I won't know till tomorrow what's on Disney Plus really in the UK, because it's got a bit messy. But some stuff now, if it's been delayed slightly, I will just, and also the international, I just can't, if it's subtitled. That's the other big problem. If I go in there and it's subtitled, I haven't got time to watch it. That's unfortunately my issue with that one.
Yeah. All right. Well, Roger, thanks. And we will, as I said, we'll talk again next year, unless we need to start doing it every 4 or 5 months. I don't know. We'll keep tabs on how quickly things change. Thanks so much, Roger.
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you much.
Bye.